This Is England is the story of a summertime school holiday, those long weeks between terms where life-changing events can take place. It's 1983 and school's out. 12-year-old Sean, played by Thomas Turgoose, is an isolated lad growing up in a grim coastal town whose father has died fighting in the Falklands War. Over the course of the summer holiday, he finds fresh male role models when those in the local skinhead take him in. With his new friends, Sean discovers a world of parties, first love and the joys of Dr. Martin Boots. Here he meets Combo, played by Stephen Graham, an older, racist skinhead who has recently got out of prison. As Combo's gang harass the local ethnic minorities, the course is set for the rite of passage that will hurl Sean from innocence to experience. So some key takeaways from this synopsis are the fact that it's set in 1983, so we need to know what's going on politically and socially during this time to fully understand the context and themes explored in the film. We also learn that Sean's father was fighting in the Falklands War, so we'll have to have a look at the cause and implications of that. Finally, we see the term Skinheads, which was a controversial movement going on in the 80s, so we'll also have a look at that. We'll begin with Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was elected as Britain's first female Prime Minister in 1979. If you have no idea about political ideologies, here's a diagram that breaks down the difference between left-wing and right-wing ideologies. As you can see, Conservatives lie on the right and they have traditional values rather than progressive or community-based values, while the left-wing believe in an inclusive society and that the government should do all they can to ensure that each and every citizen has access to things like free healthcare, benefits if needed, protection for minorities, higher taxes for the rich, and more regulation for the economy in general. The right are more focused on the individual. They believe that people should work hard and provide for themselves with minimal reliance on the government. They champion things like immigration control, less economic regulation. They don't believe the rich should be taxed more. They are more in support of employers, while the left are more in support of workers. Margaret Thatcher pledged to cut income tax, reduce public spending, reduce the powers of the union and make it easier for people to purchase their own homes. She championed privatisation of many nationalised industries. Privatisation is the transfer of a business, industry or service from public to private control and ownership. So public would be funded by the government or taxpayers and private would be funded by investors. This meant that companies were more profit-driven rather than serving the needs of the public as their priority. Some of the businesses and services that became privatised during her tenure as Prime Minister include British Airways, British Gas and British Telecom, also known as BT. In an effort to once again save money, Thatcher proposed the closure of several coal mines, putting around 20,000 jobs at risk. Thatcher believed the coal mines were not profitable and were causing a strain on taxpayers and that cheaper energy alternatives were more viable. This resulted in an almost year-long unsuccessful strike arranged by striker unions. Thatcher was an opponent of unions and believed that they had too much power. In the decade following the miners' strike of 1984, over 200,000 jobs were lost, and in 1983, 3 million people were unemployed in the UK, compared to 1.8 million unemployed in 2026. Evidence of the disdain towards Margaret Thatcher can be seen throughout the film in the set design as well as in the dialogue.
Right, we're giving that to them. There's 3.5 million unemployed out there. 3.5 million of us who can't find fucking work because they're taking them all because it's fucking cheap labour, cheap and easy labour. Fucking cheap and easy, which makes us cheap and easy. 3.5 fucking million. It's not a joke. It's not a fucking joke. And that Thatcher sits there in a fucking ivory tower and sends us on a fucking phony war.
I mentioned earlier, Thatcher had the nickname the Iron Lady. This is partially due to her handling of the Falkland Wars. This clip will explain the events of the Falklands War better than I can.
Which decided to start the 1980s a year early with the election of a new Prime Minister in 1979, Margaret Thatcher, street name Mrs. Thatcher's election was a watershed. It proved that absolutely anyone could become Prime Minister, provided they went to Oxford and married a millionaire. As well as a uterus, Mrs. Thatcher had a vision, an economic vision with all coins up it. She believed in laissez-faire economics, which is French for something, and then English again for the economics bit. Mrs. Thatcher had saved the nation from chaos with her tough economic policies, and a grateful nation erupted into lively street parties. The sense of jubilation continued during the royal wedding of the century. It was a dream come true, as the then future and still future King of England, the Prince of Charles, married one of the 3 people in his marriage, the future Queen of Hearts, Lady Diana Frank Spencer, in a wedding just like something from a fairy tale, except without a wolf or dwarfs or a beanstalk, or a happy ending. But while people waved flags like idiots at home, trouble was brewing overseas, at a faraway corner of foreign Britain known as the Isle of Falklands Island. This island was invaded by Argentinas, who'd mistaken it for an identical island they'd left lying around in exactly the same place a few centuries ago. Mrs. Thatcher immediately fought back by bravely ordering troops to fight and die on her behalf. And soon, that famous flag, the Union Jack, was flying over the Isle of Falklands Island once again. Beating the Argentines at war sealed Mrs. Thatcher's reputation as a tough guy so much that people started to call her the Iron Lady, and she soon got another chance to prove how hard she was, not in a major war, but a minor strike.
The Falklands War links to This Is England due to the fact that Sean's father was killed fighting in this war. This is a fact that Combo uses to manipulate and radicalise Sean to join his racist gang. Combo was part of the Skinhead movement.
The Skinhead movement started in the 1960s and was born from working class young people identifying with other cultures, such as Jamaican immigrants. Black music is at the heart of Skinhead culture.
Trojan helmet there, that's for the Trojan Records, reggae record label. I got a floral with hammers going through it, because the hammers stand for working class. It's a working class subculture, isn't it? So the way I've been brought up is if I want something, I go out, work for it, and I'll get it, and that's what working class means to me.
However, the look of the skinhead has also been adopted by far-right groups, which Sam and his mates are keen to distance themselves from. What did your mum and dad think about you when you came in with the skinhead?
They hated it. Yeah? They thought it was like the 80s, but it was all racist and stuff. Back then it was racist, it was very, very much so. Like with National Front, and even nowadays it's still racist, like races like Britain First and all that. And you think, why is there Nazi skinheads now, when that's definitely not where it came from? We're not part of that, we're solely for the music.
The Skinheads were a countercultural group inspired by Jamaican culture, which was explored through music such as the creation of the ska genre, which was also heavily influenced by reggae. This influence is referenced immediately in the film through the use of the reggae song 5446 Was My Number by the reggae band Toots and the Mayals. An important delineation to note is that there were two different waves of the Skinheads. The first were like what I've just described, inspired by Jamaican culture, could be found with a shaved head, wearing Dr. Martens, skinny jeans and leather jackets, often from working class backgrounds. In actuality, they were influenced by the very first wave of the skinhead, which were from the 1960s. However, as the 80s progressed and unemployment rose along with disdain for the political landscape of the UK at the time, a new wave of skinheads emerged. They were influenced by punk and became more politically divided, with some groups joining far-right movements like the National Front with racist ideologies. This is explored in the film when we see Combo take Sean to a National Front rally. Also, through the way Combo treats Milky, the only black member of the friendship group. So going back to the booklet that I found earlier, I'm just going to read a bit of information about some more contextual information of the film. So characterization. In order to cast the characters of Sean, Shane Meadows, who's the director, held many auditions with children in inner city workshops all over the country. Invites to casting sessions were given out at holiday camps around the East Coast, particularly Grimsby. It was at the Space Project, a scheme run for disadvantaged kids, many of whom had been excluded from school, that they found the quality they'd been searching for. A canny combination of innocence and hardness that set these children apart. Sean's position as the lead character meant that the narrative is tied to his perspective and we understand things from his point of view. The opening scenes show Sean in his bedroom in the house he shares with his mum. Significantly, in this sequence we see a photograph of his father, and this relationship is key to the motivations of the character. So now moving on to the gang. Shane Meadows found many of the members of the Skinhead gang through the Carlton Television Junior Workshop. Joe Gilgun was cast as Woody, the unofficial boss man of the Skinheads, who befriends Sean after he's been bullied for wearing flares on his last day of school. In the key roles of Milky and Lol, Shane cast his old friends Andrew Shim and Vicky McClure, who he worked with on A Room for Romeo Bryce. Milky is the only black character in this film that deconstructs racist attitudes, while Lol is the leader of the girls. Stephen Graham, who plays Combo, the catalyst for Sean's passage into adulthood, was one of the first people cast in This Is England. Stephen seemed perfectly placed physically and geographically to play the part of Combo, but he also brought another layer of complexity to the role. His own background is in fact mixed race, and he drew on his confusion growing up to add depth to Combo's backstory. The group dynamic in the film helps to progress the narrative, and the groups combine a number of influences. Sean's relationship with his school provides an insight into the isolation that is a part of Sean's life. As Sean walks home, he meets Woody and his gang. We see the power struggle between Tubbs, Pukey and Sean for Woody's attention. Sean is made to feel welcomed, and his problem with the boys at school begin to disappear as Woody makes light of them and encourages Sean to laugh at the situation. So now moving on to the section about skinheads. Today, racism, neo-Nazism, thuggery and all other forms of antisocial behaviour associated with skins have become the snap judgments most people make. It wasn't always like that. The original skinheads hailed from the late 60s. It began with mods who were welcomed into the world of reggae clubs in London, such as Ruby's on Carnaby Street. Here, they discovered not only ska music, but the key style components that defined the original skinhead look. The skinhead culture was taken up by black and white working class kids in shipyards and on factory lines who bonded over a love for reggae and forging a particular kind of English identity with braces, suits, boots, and sometimes a Crombie hat atop shave heads, military style. There was no peace and love for this lot. Life was a series of hard knocks, and this tough fighters' appearance was how they chose to express those truths. The second wave of skinheads in the early 80s were in one sense similar. Just kids from council estates finding their place by being different together, like teenagers everywhere. Allegiance was now sworn to bands that acknowledged the heritage of ska music, like Madness or The Specials. At the same time, a new genre sprang up in punk-infused oi music, romper-stomper screwdriver tunes charged for fighting. Dressed in Dr. Martens and with head-shaved military style, these kids would give the V to anyone foolish enough to give them the I. These were teens who came from areas of high unemployment looking for solidarity between Thatcher's me culture. They were abandoned by society, and that of course made them vulnerable to the advances of the National Front. As a second wave skinhead who had always been aware of the 60s legacy, Shane Meadows felt it was essential to create a balanced and truthful picture of the scene as he had experienced it. The skinheads, because of their aggression and outward appearance, they're almost soldier-like, were, I suppose, almost handpicked to become soldiers for the National Front. You don't see the contradiction that you're being indoctrinated into the National Front while listening to black music. When I first heard about the National Front, the picture that was painted to me was a Churchillian vision of Asian families rowing into the white cliffs of Dover on boats, and that skinheads would be on the beaches fighting to stop them entering the country. As a 12-year-old kid, that's quite a romantic image. It's almost like what your granddad did. When you're 12 and no one in your town can get a job, and someone comes up to you and says these people are to blame, it's easy to believe, says Shane, of the racism he encountered through skinheads. I did for about 3 weeks. Some people still believe that as adults, and that's frightening. To capture the inherent contradictions of skinhead culture, Shane presents a motley crew of believable characters whose behaviour is often as farcical as it is threatening and disturbing. Combo, the racist gang leader, has L plates on his car, and graffitiing F off becomes a challenge of spelling, for example. They are losers, but Shane never lets you forget that there is always a reason behind their behaviour. And that's about all you need to know for the context of This is England, which comes up in A-Level Film Studies Eduqas Paper 1. I normally compare this with Shaun of the Dead, so I will continue to make a couple more videos about This is England, going through the key things that you need to know, and then after that I'll do Shaun of the Dead. Hopefully you found this video helpful, useful and entertaining. Please leave a comment and let me know what you liked most about it, or if you have any questions or you need anything clarified. Please subscribe for more revision materials for A-Level Media, A-Level Film Studies and Level 3 Digital Media, and thank you for watching.